The entire quest to destroy the One Ring is an unforgettable epic, but some things just don't add up. Director Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings films, and the books they were based on, are timeless examples of literary mastercraftwork. J.R.R. Tolkien's sprawling world of Middle-earth has given us one of the most immersive and beloved fantasy adventure stories in modern folklore. It's also left a lot of fans scratching their heads when it comes to certain plot points. Here's 10 things that make no sense about the entire quest revolving around the destruction of the One Ring, which are sure to raise some questions.
Isildur's post-war reign. The prologue of the Fellowship of the Ring tells of the victory over the Dark Lord Sauron, before later shifting the focus to Isildur, who was responsible for cutting the ring from Sauron's hand. Both Isildur and Elrond raced to Mount Doom to destroy the ring once and for all. However, Isildur claims the ring for himself, its corrupting powers already at work. Rather than confront him, Elrond allows Isildur to keep the ring. It's odd to suggest that he would have allowed it to remain in his possession, knowing the danger. Isildur would go on to reign as King of Gondor for several more years before he was slain by orcs, causing the ring to be lost. Why no one thought to take the ring from him during this period remains a mystery.
Bilbo quits cold turkey. By all accounts, the One Ring corrupts everyone who stumbles upon it, including the hearty and stout hobbits. Frodo was tasked with taking the ring to Mount Doom, specifically because he shows remarkable resistance to its influence. Yet, even he succumbs to it much the same as Isildur did when faced with the same decision, either to destroy or keep it. Meanwhile, Bilbo Baggins had the ring in his possession for decades, and thought nothing of it. He showed no malice, contempt or hatred for his fellow hobbits, nor did he attempt to amass power in any way. He remained relatively the same, except for a nagging shadow in the back of his mind that he could not put his finger on. After lashing out at Gandalf over the ring, he quickly gives it up and quits his addiction called
Aragorn vs. the Ring Wraiths. The Nazgûl are some of the fiercest and most frightening underlings in Sauron's army. Originally men who fell into corruption and shadow after being given rings of power by Sauron, they later fought as soulless harbingers of death and darkness. In Fellowship, the nine-track Frodo Baggins in an attempt to reclaim the One Ring for their master, which comprises the first half of the film. Things get serious when the Nazgûl attack the hobbits on Weathertop, ending with Frodo being stabbed by a Morgul blade. Aragorn then intervenes, fending off all the Nazgûl at the same time, and sending them fleeing in terror. This makes little sense, given how ferocious the Nazgûl are in a fight, especially the dreaded Witch King of Angmar, who easily overpowers Gandalf the White. How Aragorn was able to tackle all of them at once and force them to retreat is anyone's guess. The elves' journey to the Undying Lands. Men live and die far quicker than the elves, who are immortal and everlasting. That makes it all the more peculiar that they would suddenly abandon Middle-earth and sail for the Undying Lands, just as Sauron's forces massed to full strength. When Gandalf informs Elrond that the One Ring has been found, no attempt is made to stop the elves and amass them for a new war campaign.
Boromir's presence. From the very moment he glimpsed the One Ring during the Secret Council in Rivendell, Boromir was enchanted by it, and began suggesting they use it against Sauron. Both Elrond and Gandalf quickly picked up on Boromir's dangerous words, the latter using the black speech of Mordor to drive home just how terrifying a prospect it could be to use the ring. Yet for some reason, Boromir was allowed to join the Fellowship, even after his obsession with the ring grew. He made little attempt to hide it, and members of the Fellowship knew that he could not be trusted around Frodo. And still, they let him stay. While an honorable man by every account, Boromir's weakness over the ring should have been a catalyst to send him home. Saruman's hold over Theoden. Watching a king disintegrate both physically and mentally would be enough for anyone to step back and be suspicious. When Eomer and the riders of Rohan engaged in several battles with Uruk-hai, they brought it to the ailing King Theoden's attention, calling out Saruman as the culprit. Theoden's fragile mental state, combined with Grima Wormtongue's influence, would have been enough to turn the tide of public opinion. Yet, Eomer and his men were banished as traitors, while the rest remained loyal to Theoden. For some reason.
The absent riders of Rohan. Eomer and his riders participated in multiple battles with Uruk-hai sent by Saruman, which makes it odd that they'd suddenly be absent from the Battle of Helm's Deep. Eomer would have known that the attacks would flow from Saruman's direction, and routinely patrolled the area. Yet, a gigantic army of Uruk-hai managed to march across the countryside into Rohan, and head directly for Helm's Deep. It's doubtful that Eomer would have missed such a thing, or went patrolling elsewhere, away from the main threat. Gandalf's exit to catch up with Eomer should have been unnecessary.
The taking of Osgiliath. Few aspects of Return of the King make less sense than the sacking of Osgiliath. For all intents and purposes, it was a numbers game from the start. Denethor was obsessed with keeping Osgiliath as a choke point against Mordor's forces, which begs the question why he didn't send a larger force. Indeed, Denethor seems to think nothing of sending an incredibly small contingent of soldiers to hold the city. Why not send a larger force and be done with it? Securing Osgiliath would have gone a long way towards stemming the tide of Sauron's attacks on Gondor, or at least bought it valuable time. Gandalf versus the Witch King. The Nazgûl are powerful adversaries and the Witch King of Angmar is a capable warrior in his own right, but why would Gandalf the White be so susceptible to his attacks? Even Gandalf the Grey was capable of slaying a Balrog in a days-long fight without rest. Aragorn managed to fend off all 9 Nazgûl on Weathertop, but even the vastly more powerful Gandalf the White was trounced without the Witch King laying a finger on him. It seems incomprehensible that a Balrog slayer would be bested in seconds by the Witch King. The Eagles. Throughout the trilogy, the Eagles were used as a convenient plot device to save the day. They rescued Gandalf from Saruman's clutches at the top of Orthanc, and they would later attack and battle the Nazgûl outright, before seeking out the exhausted, near-dead bodies of Frodo and Sam. Of course, this begs the question as to why the Eagles weren't called upon in the first place, to act as transport to bring the Fellowship closer to Mordor. At the very least, this would have shaved a lot of time off their journey. But then again, that would negate the need for an actual adventure, wouldn't it?